The Panthers collapsed in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final and did not give themselves a chance to get a stranglehold on the Stanley Cup Final.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, June 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. That is Nich Fairbanks here, joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You can follow him on X at Prudentia0. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can do that all on FanDuel. So the Florida Panthers lose to the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-4 in overtime off of Leon Draisaitl's game winner just 11 minutes into the overtime period. But the Panthers had a 3-0 series lead. Chase Stuart Skinner and the script flipped from period 1 to period 2, and then it was all even going into the third period. The Edmonton Oilers scored 4 unanswered. Sam Reinhart scored with 20 seconds left, only the second latest game-tying goal for in NHL history, right behind Corey Perry's in Game 2. But after the Panthers controlling play was not enough as Draisaitl got that game winner, and now it's a 2-2 series it's a best of 3 as the series shifts to Edmonton. And Nick, the biggest takeaways that I have is that the Edmonton Oilers showed their desperation. The Florida Panthers really sat back on their heels in Game 4. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk gets those 2 power play goals, his first goals on special teams since the Tampa series. Anton Lundell gets that goal off a forecheck from Carter Verhaeghe. But then the Panthers, the Edmonton Oilers turn on. Not only was it the goals that were the difference in this one, but Edmonton committed 3 penalties in the first. Then it was the Florida Panthers committing those 3 penalties. So it really was a flip of the switch for Edmonton after that goalie change.
So to sum up this game in one word, and then I'll elaborate a little bit, inexcusable.
Yeah.
Great start. Couldn't ask for a better start at home. But to sit back and allow the Oilers to get back into this game and back into the series, it seems like it was like a flip of, I think it was Game 2. And you really felt like all the momentum was on Florida's side going back home to Florida. But now we're going back to Edmonton, and you have to wonder, hey, is this now the toughest challenge that the Florida Panthers have had to face over the last couple of seasons, with their cup runs?
Yeah, and you think that with the Panthers and taking a 3-0 series lead last year, and then their inability to close out games, but it's also an inability to take control of a series sometimes as well for them. And to think that it was not only the goalie pull for the Edmonton Oilers, it was also Evander Kane going onto the fourth line, going up from the top 6 to the bottom for the Oilers. And to think that one of the goals for the Panthers was on a 5-on-3, a great screen from Matthew Tkachuk, and then the second one where there was Skinner was above his right on top of the crease, and then Tkachuk scores on the open net. But I mean, for the Panthers going into the second period, I mean, just out of position, getting the there was the holding of the stick from Dmitry Kulikov, but there's also the holding of the stick from Jeff Skinner on the Darnell Nurse goal. So I know that it was a missed call there, but also after one of the Panther goals, Sam Bennett also got a stick up high as well on the Oilers. So I'm not going to blame the officiating on this one on the night for the why the Panthers lost here, but it's just a matter of just the fact that they just couldn't keep that pressure, and the fact that it was that the Edmonton Oilers got to their speed game when they weren't able to get to it in the first period. And really, that's really how the Oilers were unable to get into game 3 when the Panthers were able to control things in the neutral zone. They were able to control, Edmonton was able to do that in the neutral zone a lot better after period 1.
Yeah, and I think after the first period, you would have to think that the flip, I don't want to say the script was going to be flipped, but listen, a team is not going to get 3 power plays in a row, like the Panthers did in the first period, and not expect that there's going to be some calls going the other way. They needed to be better. And on top of that, they needed to defend better. I think the only goal that I was actually really not happy with was the tying goal, because that's their bread and butter. They clear the net out. They're very strong in front of Bob. And to see that Seth and Mikola and the third line being outworked below the 2 dots, it just, that was basically the culmination of the game right there for me.
Yeah, and the fact is that when Podkolzin got that puck with his backhand and then scored on Bobrovsky, that was a result of puck watching. Their backs was towards Podkolzin while they were looking at Darnell Nurse trying to do that wraparound chance right before he tried that centering feed to the middle. So that's another thing for the Panthers. They were just caught puck watching, and I guess, I mean, psychologically, when you're up that much, I get why you don't face the same desperation as the other, but I mean, it's the Stanley Cup final. All these teams are so skilled, so I mean, it's just the frustrating part. And then once it became 3-2, it's like, oh man, now it's just a matter of trying to get your legs back under you and to still feel that same desperation that you did in the first period. I mean, it really felt like that the Panthers really exerted all that energy in that, and to think that the Panthers had an opportunity to go 4-1 where Anton Lundell got the steal on Kulak off a breakout pass, and then Calvin Pickard, outstanding save with the blocker right before, and then just a few minutes later, that's when the Podkolzin goal happened. And to think those 3 penalty kills that the Panthers have, one of them was with Barkov on a delay of game. I mean, even though Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scored on that power play goal, Sam Bennett saved the goal right before on that breakaway by I believe it was Evan Bouchard. Yes, it was Evan Bouchard, but he saved a goal. But I mean, to think that Nugent-Hopkins was a game time decision and he was on his game, but also I felt like at times that Sergei Bobrovsky in this one was on his game on the penalty kill. I mean, there was that huge second chance opportunity that he saved on Corey Perry with the toe after the puck got deflected. So that's another thing of just you thought that they could get a little bit of a stranglehold at times, even though the Edmonton Oilers were pushing, but it just didn't result in that. And also, Panthers had a power play going from the second period into the third, and also a lot of zone time where Alexander Barkov had a big chance off redirection. It just couldn't go through. And I'm like, man, after all this, you could have at least silenced everything.
So I will say this, Sergei Bobrovsky was not the problem last night. He played fantastic. If anything, he's probably the main reason why the Panthers were even still in that game after the second period. Some of the saves he was making, like the one on Corey Perry that he did, he was giving them a chance to stay in the game and not let it get too out of hand. Now, was the goal that made it 4-3 on, with Edmonton? That was not on him. Barkov and the defense should have been more aware that, hey, Edmonton's changing. They have fresh players on. The forecheck's coming. Just get the puck out. But unfortunately, for a lot of the game, I feel like the puck was just not working for Barkov at all. I felt like he was fighting it a lot. And the last part of this, I guess I'll say, is it is very hard to get momentum back or to get your feet under you when you have a lead like they did. And a team has never lost. I'm not saying that ever entered their head, but after the last 2 games of them scoring 9 goals, it almost makes you wonder, like, hey, let's take the foot off the gas. Let's just play defense. And you can't do this against this team. They should know this already. They played them last year. You can't.
Yeah, and if there's a lesson learned there, it's from last year. And Paul Maurice said that even after the game, that if you were preparing for 7, you knew that you're going to lose 3 and having to find a way to bounce back. And this is the first time since the 2006 Stanley Cup Final where a team has blown a 3-goal lead and lost. And this is the first time since 1919 that has resulted in a loss in overtime. And that was with a building with Jaromir Jagr in it, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. So there was a lot of witnesses in this one in the building at Amerant Bank Arena on Thursday night for the Panthers. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss more about our 3 duds of the game and the moment where we knew the game was lost. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers a highlight-worthy performance, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And for me, I'm tracking a few players from the Stanley Cup playoffs and also the NBA Finals as well. What will Tyrese Halliburton do for the Indiana Pacers and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and also for the Florida Panthers here on some shot props for Alexander Barkov and the likes of Carter Verhaeghe. I'm looking at those on FanDuel. So new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 2 here on this Friday, June 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, Armando Velez, Nich Fairbanks here, as the Florida Panthers lose to the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-4 in overtime. And let's discuss our three duds of the game. So for me, third dud is, like you said, not all Sergei Bobrovsky's fault, but I do think that some of the goals that were scored from Edmonton is because of the fact that he was committing a little too low, and then he got beat above the shoulder, especially from that sharp angle from Darnell Nurse there, and then unfortunately was screened on the first one from Nuge, which goes to my second dud of the game, Alexander Barkov, and not able to really get going offensively on the night. A good amount of defensive plays, but he was the only line that was really a minus when it comes, not minus on the plus minus, but minus on the Corsi percentage, pinned in their own end. A lot of pressure from the McDavid line, and this is when you have the last change in order to control your matchups, and they were still on their end of the ice quite a bit. Saw a lot of hard checks, like the one from Carter Verhaeghe on Evan Bouchard, which I'm glad that the officials decided not to call that one towards the end of the third period, because that would have been a big swing. And also a big delay of game call that he had and screened his own goaltender there. So that's a bit of a dud for Alexander Barkov. And then the number one dud for the game here is the Seth Jones-Nico Mikkola pair. And the fact is that the goal that Sergei Bobrovsky gave up to Jake Wallman, that's a result of so many guys being near or below the goal line. And yes, puck support is great, but the fact that everybody was so close together trying to dig at the puck instead of being spread out, making it easier to break it out of the zone, I thought that was just poor play from the Panthers. And then when they were trying to get that first pass out, Mikkola was above the circle, above the dots. And that's why that side of the ice for Jake Wallman was so open, where he was able to beat Sergei Bobrovsky on the past the glove there. So those are my 3 duds of the game. How about you?
Number 3 dud is Nico Mikkola. I felt like he played pretty well to start the game, but as the game started to wear on, became a non-factor, was getting beat on a lot of plays. And as you were saying, that Wallman goal was, you can't leave the zone. You can't be on top of the circles if you're a defenseman. Sorry, you got to be there for support. My second dud, Evan Rodriguez. I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he did last game, honestly.
Yeah.
He
didn't notice him.
Whenever he had the puck, he lost it. I don't feel like he separated men from the puck. Just, he was a complete ghost. And usually this is when he shined. I mean, he did very well last year in the Stanley Cup final. So I would hope that he would have a rebound here in game 5. And then my first stud is Alexander Barkov, another milk carton recipient, playing well defensively, kind of. But offensively, this is where he needs to lead. The Panthers obviously need offense right now, and he needs to be more selfish and shoot the puck more. There's no doubt about it. If he would shoot, and as you said, he had a golden opportunity, maybe Panthers walk away with a win and it'd be up 3-1.
Yeah. I'm looking at some of my notes, and really the only opportunity that I saw from Evan Rodriguez was off a centering feed, off a great zone entry that Calvin Pickard saved really early on in the third period that kept it at 3-3 for this game. So really the Evan Rodriguez wasn't too much of a factor in this one. I mean, and you look at the shot charts for the Panthers here, multiple guys were just above three shots. I mean, Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov, Evan Rodriguez, Matthew Tkachuk, Luosterainen, Marchand and Luosterainen each had 5 for the Panthers. So the third line, although they got caught in the Puck Colson goal, like you mentioned earlier, they were generating quite a bit, and for as far as the offense, but you think that you still need all the lines to contribute for the Panthers. And also there's miscommunication. I looked at the simulator for the last goal that Draisaitl scored on Bobrovsky. There was third line was on, and then fourth line was Barkov got on for a split second, and then it was the fourth line getting on. So there was a miscommunication. Not only was it that long change, but it was a miscommunication. Therefore, for that eventual game winner that went 5-hole through Sergei Bobrovsky there. Ouch.
Let me say this. I did mention it in our room that the Panthers have had trouble with the long change, and it's because of the speed of the Edmonton Oilers. Now, if you're going to make a change, you either need to do it quick and the bench needs to be ready, or you need to figure something out. Because either you're going to start taking penalties with too many men on the ice, or exactly what happened last night. Lundell goes off. They don't know who's going on. And unfortunately, like, things like that in the Stanley Cup final cannot happen. It just, I understand Marie says that the players own the bench right now. Paul, I need you to take the reins on that one, man. Like, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And the long change period in the first 2 games were the ones dominated by the Panthers. And to think that with that 3-0 lead in going into the second, it's like, okay, Panthers might be able to score 6, but unfortunately they weren't able to pour on even more than they should have. But hey, that's why you play the games, and you actually don't always judge this on paper even before the period actually starts. So the moment where we knew the game was lost for me, this one might be a little different. I have no idea where I have no idea where you're going to go on this, but where I'm going to go here is there was a chance on the forecheck that Sam Bennett had. It was 2 Edmonton Oilers there. I think it was Matthias Ekholm there. It was 1-on-2. The Panthers still ended up with the puck. And then the opportunity hits gets past of Calvin Pickard and then hits right off the post. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, that was the Panthers' opportunity. and like I said, 1-on-2 in the corner. It was the far side corner right before, and they couldn't convert there. And then just moments later, that's when Draisaitl scored. I'm just thinking, yep. That missed opportunity was when I was just like, I believe that the Panthers are cooked here.
So it's funny how the game ebb and flows like that. You have a glorious chance, and then all of a sudden at the next, at the other side of the ice, that something fluky like that happens and it goes in. I mean,
And the Panthers control play in overtime.
Yep. It happens, man. But as far as where I'm going to go with it, I'm not sure if it was overtime. I believe it was, but where Matthew Tkachuk had it on his stick and the net was wide open. And then I think you had Ekholm and another defenseman or another forward down and just shot it into them. Like, he was the Panther last night. He had the hot stick. He was on hat trick watch. Could you imagine if he put that in and got the hat trick to win? Like, as soon as that didn't go in, and because he usually puts those in, or he has the luck of that, and as soon as that didn't go, I'm like, okay, you're not going to get a better chance than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And that the Panthers had a big chance to redeem themselves multiple times in this one, despite, as Sam Reinhart says, playing on their heels, and the fact that Edmonton consistently had a push for them. But here we are. It's a 2-2 series. Now it goes back to Edmonton after a 1-day break in between games 4 and 5, and we are going to continue the conversation. Ask, should the Panthers continue to be the favorite going into the rest of the series? We will discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And you just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling and get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the candidates faster. And I've been in a spot where I needed to hire, like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Segment 3 here on this Friday, June 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Nich Fairbanks on another edition of Fairbanks Friday to continue recapping the Panthers' 5-4 overtime loss against the Edmonton Oilers in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final. So there is a guarantee of a Game 6 for the Panthers and the Oilers on Tuesday night. Somebody will be going into the barn that night with a 3-2 series lead with a chance for the Stanley Cup to be awarded. But the Panthers missed their opportunity to at least have that chance on Saturday night as the series shifts to Edmonton. And I'm going to keep the same energy that I had. I believe it was a podcast that we had after Game 4 of Round 1, where the Panthers came back against the Tampa Bay Lightning to take a 3-1 series lead at the time. That was the Aaron Ekblad forearm to Brandon Hagel, the Nico Mikula 5-minute major, and then the Panthers still were able to come back even after a goal was disallowed for Ekblad. I said at the time that the Panthers didn't necessarily win the series then, but they prevented themselves from losing the series based on what was going to come as far as a suspension at the time. To this one for the Panthers, they did not lose the series in Game 4. I say that I have the right to change my mind. I'm saying this right now, but they missed an opportunity to take control. That is the worst part about this when it comes to just their ability to close it out and to continue to have that same energy from period one to the rest of the game. And also but I also believe that the Panthers should still be the favorite. They're still firing on the power play. I get you're going to get less of these as the series goes on, but with Edmonton making the goaltending change, now it's Calvin Pickard's series. And he's been a journeyman. He's been on 5 different NHL teams. Yeah, the whole record of 7-0 in these playoffs after coming for Stuart Skinner the first time, and it took an injury for Stuart Skinner to go back in. But you're thinking about the Panthers and their ability to be tight in the neutral zone and prevent speed. As series goes tighter, that's when the speed is less in the Stanley Cup final. So I believe that the Panthers should still be the favorite, even though there is a chance to play 2 road games in Game 5 and Game 7 in Edmonton.
So I agree with you there. I did pick Florida in 6. Their game, if you have not paid attention over the last 3 seasons, their game is surrounded about playing 7-game series. The longer it goes, the better it is. Now, did they lose the series in Game 4? I'll be on the opposite side of that. No, because a lot of people could have said that Edmonton lost the series after Game 3 with their performance. What happened? I think that this series is so close that one game to me is not going to matter, like from game to game. So, like Game 1 into Game 2. Florida took over and they took it. Game 3, they had all the momentum. Going into Game 4, they had all the momentum, and guess what happened? Now you go into Game 5, you're going into a hostile environment. Florida likes playing on the road. They play their best on the road, in my opinion. Why? Out of everything that has happened, why would you still not choose the Cup champs as the favorite out of the next 3? They've been there. They know how to do it. And secondly, they will rise to the occasion. I believe that. I still think that whatever happened last night, it stings, but they will make sure it is gone by the time they land in Edmonton, and it'll be locked in for tomorrow night.
Yeah, and you think twice in this series. You're thinking 3-1 lead for the Panthers in Game 1, 3-0 lead in this one, and you think that, okay, yeah, there's the whole fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But I have a hard time believing that if it were a third time that the Panthers would say, okay, this is where we really truly gotta be a lot more tighter and just not be so complacent. And that might be a little harsh for for saying that for the Panthers, a team that's won. But again, we've seen this so many times how it's the winning has come with a lot of the roller coaster ride of just sometimes not really putting the dagger in earlier. I mean, but hey, that's really about the Panthers really taking their punches and also being able to punch back. And how many more punches do the Panthers have? And here's the thing: Chris Knoblauch has consistently switched up his pairs in the series, and I think that's also a major advantage for the Panthers. They've kept the same ones throughout the series. I don't see a situation where Paul Maurice is going to switch them now this late into the playoffs.
Nope.
So that's another thing. They were sheltering a lot of the minutes of Matthias Ekholm coming and back into the series. They put Troy Stetcher, which Troy Stetcher was the one that was beat on the forecheck from Carter Hagee right before centering it to Anton Lundell. Jeff Skinner was playing in his first Stanley Cup final game. So, I mean, the fact is that you make a lot of these lineup changes and you're scratching a 30-goal scorer in Victor Arvidsson after he scored in Game 1. So, are the Panthers in this position with still having AJ Greer in the lineup who could play that heavy game and the pace that the Panthers could play? Like you said, longer the series go, I really do believe that the mileage, that although there's a lot of mileage on the Panthers, they know how to it feels like they're on mile like 22 or 23 of the 26.2.
Definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned Greer. I don't feel like he was on his game last night. I don't feel like he was the physical presence that he was in game 3. They need to get back to that. And I think being on the road to simplify how they're going to play will definitely do that. And so I expect him and also his line mates to be better. The one thing that I will give Knobloch credit for was actually making the goalie change right after the first period.
Yeah.
I think he waited too long in game 3 to do it. But at the same time, that game was so far out of hand. Like, I guess there was no time to actually pull Skinner. But here's the thing, too. Although Pickard has actually played well during these playoffs, it's the Stanley Cup final. How is he going to be through a full 60 minutes of pressure and that Florida Panthers forecheck? I mean, it's going to be a different experience from him. I really don't see him being successful, to be honest, and that's not me getting on a guy. It's just I don't see where his experience is going to come in and how he's going to be able to handle that pressure. Now, is Florida going to have to game plan a little bit differently because, Skinner was swimming a lot? Yeah, they're going to have to, but that just means that they're going to have to get the dirty goals. They're going to have to get meaner and tougher around the blue paint. And guess whose game that is? That's Sam Bennett's.
Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, AJ Greer. So at least one guy on each line for the Panthers. Not as much as the top line as the other guys. Those are so that's really what it's gonna turn into. And like you said, Skinner was swimming in his net. We see more of a calming presence for Calvin Pickard in it. So that's really what it's going to take, going back to the basics of Florida Panthers hockey. And hey, on that Lundell goal, it was very encouraging to see how they were able to and that goal from Lundell, that all started with a battle in the D zone and just getting a quick out right before they were able to get it deep. So it really comes down to just getting a proper change and going to battle for the Panthers there. And hopefully we see more of that in game 5. And the thing is, Panthers are traveling to Edmonton and they don't have the distraction of, hey, there's a need to win the cup there's an opportunity, to win the cup on the road. So that's another thing. You're guaranteed to come back to Sunrise. So is that a better opportunity? I truly think that this is that opportunity to really hone in on your game. I
do. The distractions won't be there. I'm sorry, Swiftie fans, but they won't have to deal with the camera going to her and Travis Kelce every 30 seconds. I just think that they're just going to have to play their best game of the series to really take over. And they're going to really have to be the team that we think they are and that they've proven that they have been in the past. We need them to do it 2 more times. It starts with Saturday night. Take control of this series, beat them at their own house, come back home, and raise the cup like you did last year at home.
Yep. And hopefully we get to see that. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We will have a recap show shortly after Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Thank you for having me on. I'm going to say RELAX again because, listen, we're still in this. It's basically zeros. And everybody, you guys can follow me on X at Prudential0. And hopefully next time when we're talking and we have a show, we'll be lifting this guy again.
Yep. So hopefully that is the case. So, Nick, thank you so much as always, and I will see you next week.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.